Hello and good morning. What a lovely morning. I know it's chilly out there and a little bit cool in here, but hopefully it'll warm up. So welcome to this meeting, the Stewartry Area Committee on Wednesday, the 20th of November. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally and using their title, e.g. Councillor Smith, so that it's clear who are councillors and who by the process of elimination are officers. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPad or iPhone. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. This morning we have Dee and Glenkens Ward Youth Councillor Val Walker in attendance. Welcome. We'll now move to agenda item 1, Cedron apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation. Could I ask the clerk, Claire Rogerson, for the Cedron apologies and which members in the room and those linking by Microsoft Teams, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I've got all 9 members present this morning. Yourself and Councillors Lowe, McFarlane and Stitt present in the Council chamber, with the Vice Chair Councillors Blake, Campbell, Heavy and Young present on Teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I can confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare based on the definition? Statement of connection from transparency reasons members may wish to make a public statement. Okay. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting, 18th of September 2024. Can I ask members are asked to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Members, are you happy to approve? See, we have Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm running a few minutes late. I'm just outside. I'll be in a minute. But it was just a note that in the minutes, I think there's an error. It says Vice Chair or Chair of something, and it's the incorrect person. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my papers. I think it's the incorrect person noted in the minutes as Chair. Oh, that was it. Yeah. Let me just find the papers. I could be wrong. Sure I saw that when I was going through them. Just give me a minute.
Take your time.
Where did I see it? Do you want me to come back to it at the end? Sorry, because I not got my specs on. Sorry.
In the meantime, are there any other amendments to the minutes before we approve them? Obviously, we need Councillor Drysdale's comment before we can approve them. So can I check, Claire, how do you want us to proceed?
Okay, well, Councillor Drysdale said that the Chair and Vice Chair were perhaps marked incorrectly on the minute. From what I can see, in front of us, the minute's correctly showing the Chair and and Vice Chair. I can't see any other references in the minute, so our members happy that they're
Apologies.
correct.
Sorry, Claire, I'll come back in. Apologies. It was actually, sorry, it's another meeting this afternoon. I'm getting all my minutes and notes mixed up.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move ahead then. Everybody happy to approve? Thank you. Item 4, Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate. End of year assessment of quality and curriculum service plan 2023 to 2024 performance. 1st of April 23 to 31st of March 2024. Report by Executive Director of Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing. Our first report is the annual performance report from Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate. This report asks for members to scrutinise the performance from the period 1st of April 2023 to 31st of March 2024. I'm particularly encouraged to read about the HMIE inspections, mentioning the strengths in 2 of our primary schools, Kells and Dalbeattie. Both reports are positive and recognise the work of staff, pupils, parents and communities. It's also good to see in Appendix 2 the Stewartry attainment figure set against those for Dumfries and Galloway and the rest of Scotland, as this is what members have previously requested. I would like to welcome to the meeting Stuart McCougan, Head Teacher from Dalbeattie High School, Stephen Foster, Head Teacher from Castle Douglas High School and Dalry Secondary School, and also Anthony Tuffery, Head Teacher from Kirkcudbright Academy, who are joined by Jim Brown, Assistant Director, Schools, to answer any members' questions or address any member comments. A big welcome to the head teachers, and thank you for taking the time to attend this committee. I'm sure members will appreciate that while you can answer generic questions, there are sensitivities around questions or comments identifying specific schools or individuals. I'll ask members to bear this in mind when asking questions. I'll open the floor to members' questions and comments. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. I'll not try and repeat myself in this deal. Page 30 in the attainment figures, P4 and P7, some of the percentages are quite alarming, but I like to note that in S3, the figures are very heartening, especially numeracy up to 96.9. And I think Alison may as well give a breakdown in the question I asked last week at this deal about SQ attainment on page 26. Sorry, it's page 25, sorry, the first one, and page 26 about SQA attainment in S5 and S6s. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. I wonder if you can just clarify what is your question for me.
Sorry, on the page 25 in the attainment charts, it's quite alarming to see P4 and P7s compared to D and G. The Stewart is quite low, but in S3, the figures for S3 are quite good. Well, I'd say really good when you see numeracy at 96.9.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. So in terms of when we're looking at our ACL data is gathered in Primary 1, Primary 4 and Primary 7. That's a national expectation. It's also then gathered in S3. When we talk about ACL data, that's achievement of a level. We are looking at the judgment of teachers within schools. So therefore, this is Primary 1, Primary 4 and Primary 7 teachers looking at how they assess young people using a collection of information. We know that when we moderate that perhaps we are not getting that right at the moment, and so therefore we have put into place where we're no longer just looking at P1, P4, P7. We are now looking at nursery 5 all the way through to P7 to try and track it better, to ensure that when we are looking at that progress, that it's not just pinpointing 3 particular years, we're actually getting that story from nursery all the way through to primary 7. You're correct, Councillor Stitt, in order to say that when you look at the S3 data, it's as if something quite miraculous happens. And that's not to say that one's getting it right and one's getting it wrong. One sector is not getting it right, one sector is not getting it wrong. But quite often when S3s are getting their levels attained, there's that look to the senior phase, and so therefore it's about what they're likely to get in S4 and S5, so therefore it's perhaps easier to make that decision of what level they're at. So yes, the figures, your words were quite alarming. We know that we're not a typical local authority. We know that we are in family group 4 with the local government benchmarking. However, we also know that there's work to be done. And as a local authority, that's exactly what we're doing. And that's why we're working with our schools to try and improve where our ACL levels sit. I wonder if it would be helpful for some of the head teachers to share their experience at S3 level.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. I would agree very much with what Alison has said. Just in addition to that moderation and getting the right standard from P1 through to S3, we do a lot of work across the authority, between clusters and between schools, but certainly that P4 and P7 is, those kind of stats are very much known to us within our cluster, and we do a lot of work within the cluster to share expertise, resource, to be very preemptive in terms of knowing any issues that are coming through and trying to address that. In terms of the S3 achievement of a level data, there is a degree of security in the secondary, because the following year the young people will sit national qualifications. So in terms of a national moderation and standardisation exercise, we have very solid and robust data when it goes through to S4 that perhaps gives an extra sense of confidence in the secondary when it goes through there. So I think, like has been said, it's perhaps not this miraculous recovery that occurs come to S3, not to suggest the secondaries don't add value, but it's more maybe a case of just that moderation and closer working in the cluster, and certainly the closer working that we have across the clusters in the authority will hopefully improve that in time.
Thank you. Yep. I note that Councillor Young has a comment, but first of all, perhaps Councillor McFarlane, I don't know, did you have a relevant question to what was just the comment just made? No? Okay, so Councillor Young, your comment?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. I note on page 15, the education and learning, it's a variety of very positive, wonderful statements. Places of learning are inclusive, etc. Now, we know that, for instance, Castle Douglas High School has accessibility problems, so it's not really totally inclusive to somebody who's in a wheelchair. Could we perhaps have a prefix to that whole section which paints such a rosy picture? Could we perhaps have the phrase, we strive to ensure places of learning are inclusive, we get it right for every child? Because these are such positive statements without real foundation. So I don't think education in Dumfries and Galloway is that wonderful that we've reached this miraculous place where everything's wonderful. So I'll repeat again, could we have a wee brief introduction saying we strive to ensure? And if you'll forgive me, Chair, can I ask another question following Councillor Stitt's statement about the attainment levels?
Yes, go ahead.
On page 26, we have Stewartry trends. Now, I always think a bar chart or a line graph is much easier to spot in terms of following trends, but there is a worrying dip in the 5-year trends. And on the previous page, they compared figures in the Stewartry with Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland. Why on page 26 have we not got a comparison with figures in Scotland. We have them for the Stewartry, we have them for the Dumfries and Galloway, and why not Scotland, so we can see how we're comparing against national figures. So that's my 2 points, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Would somebody like to respond to that?
Thank you, Councillor Young. I'll come in on the first part. The point that you've made around places of learning are inclusive, sustainable and meet the needs of local communities, that's actually a statement from the Council for Council priorities for education. So that's the Council aspiration and therefore not a statement that we have put in from education. Thank you.
That's fine, but could we not have that down as an aspiration rather than a bland statement?
I'll come back in. That's actually not within our gift because these are set by the Council as Council priorities. And so, as I'm saying, we've just to mark where we feel education in this report is being reflected. So we've, in the successes we've highlighted in this report, it's under getting it right for every child and under young people and adults succeed in what they want to achieve. So they're the areas that we've highlighted for this report.
Did you have anything to add?
Good morning, Councillor Young. In terms of the 5-year trend for SQA, as you'll be aware that we are still that sits from 2020 to 2024, so therefore we have our COVID years within that, and also we know that there has been a national dip in performance as well. So therefore, although the trend does look quite significant in terms of a downwards trend, it's absolutely in line with the national picture. Also, in terms of the third question you asked about, can we have that compared to the national picture? Again, that's when we would report through the LGBF when that comes out in December.
Councillor Young, is that okay? Have those satisfied your questions?
No, it's not really okay, and it hasn't satisfied. A parent looking to see how our Stewartry schools are compared with others in Dumfries and Galloway and others in Scotland, we get absolutely no idea from these figures that are presented here.
Okay, well, we will... Sorry, would you like to respond further?
Thank you, Councillor. I think there is an item on your agenda about the purpose of area reports, and we're happy to take feedback in terms of what you want. We're asked to report, and we report on what we're asked to report. If that's not what you're looking for, then I think there's a vehicle within the committees to be able to raise that. But we report on what we're asked to report on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And what we'll do now is invite Councillor McFarlane for his question or comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A number of things. I think you look at page 19 and 20, there's quite a lot of data there that's not available now, and it says for year 23, 24, so I would have expected that would have been available to us. I mean, we often get reports to this committee from various departments, and very often they put this in, and I'm wondering if it's an issue for us as a committee that we need to ask for these reports at certain times in order to make sure that we get that data presented, or if there's another process somewhere else that needs looking at. Another thing is that it was mentioned there about how we're performing in relation to our benchmarking group. I'd be interested to know who's in the benchmarking group and how we do perform against them, because some of the data here does seem to show us in a fairly poor light. The report goes on to talk about pupil equity funding, and I'd be interested in comments from the head teachers in relation to how effective that is. Is it bringing additionality? Is it bringing the benefits that it's intended to? And one last one, on pages 40, 41. On page 40, it talks about free school meals, and it says FSM. But you go to page 41, and I've got HWB, CLG, CNG, MIC, and SLA, which I don't understand what any of them are. I've checked the glossary in the report, they're not there, and perhaps we need. a glossary in relation to these reports, because clearly it's written by education for education, and everyone there will understand that, but I don't have a grasp on it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a
Thank you.
response?
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane. Yes, you're quite right that there are areas where the data is not available, and I think it is about perhaps looking at the timings of the performance reports, because this data will be published, as Alison just said, in December, and we're asked to bring it here either in September or November time, so it's just the way the reporting cycle is set up within the governance structures. The LGBF benchmarking in our groups is all available on the LGBF framework website, which you can get to, but we can also send you a note of our family groupings if you would like that. As far as the acronyms, this is a very difficult one in the fact that head teachers produce their PEF impact reports on an annual basis, and this year we were then asked if these could be shared at area committees. Head teachers had already written all of these reports, and they were in production before we were asked, so we could certainly look at a glossary going forward, and we've also had other comments around perhaps the format of them and how they're laid out, and we've taken that feedback from other committees, which again we'll look at as we bring these next year, but this was a request after the head teachers had started to produce these reports.
Councillor McFarlane.
Thank you for the question, Councillor McFarlane. So within PEF, for example, one of the things that can happen is recruitment of staff. So some schools will do equity workers, and that's to help provide links between home and the school. Help communication, perhaps start to manage things like attendance. So you're obviously trying to measure, you're always trying to measure the impact of what you do, you know, and sometimes that measurement won't be attainment, sometimes that measure will be attendance, it will be the ability to attend all your classes, etc., that ultimately you would hope would lead to that improvement in attainment. Some of the challenges of PEF and spending PEF are around recruitment, getting the right people, availability of people, and then also access and paying for services. So you're always kind of looking, so, you know, in the past, for example, when you're trying to deal with mental health, I've worked with Quarriers to create programmes for kids with autism and ADHD to help them self-regulate, and that's something that it's difficult to provide a tangible impact to that, but when you're talking individually to the pupils and how their mental health and well-being is, then there's improvements, and that's seen through their attendance, and then hopefully that will pass through into their attainment. But that's something that we do, all schools do every year, is where, you know, you're evaluating what you've done, and then what else can we do within that. But there's other things for PEF where you're perhaps providing breakfast clubs, clothing, trips is a big one, because obviously you're trying to close the gap, so that all children have the ability to go on trips within the school. So that can even extend to things like activities weeks, for example. I know that's something I've done in previous schools, where when all the children get access to activities week, that there's no barrier to any child going along.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, is that?
No, it's good to hear that, and reading through the report, you do get a sense that it is working, so it's really just a check-in with the head teachers to make sure that they feel that there is a benefit in the PEF funding, and that the pupils, and it is sometimes, I can understand, difficult to quantify, but I think it is about the individuals and how they prosper. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale? Or is it related to the last comment, or is this a new comment?
No, it's not.
Okay,
Thank you,
please
Chair.
go.
Thank you. I know the report, we're quite aware that it's with regards to the quality and the curriculum service plan, but I just wanted to mention a few things before I ask a couple of questions, if that's okay. I just wanted to thank the teams across Dumfries and Galloway Council for the success we've had with Let's Get Sporty. in Hardgate and Springholm. It's been fantastic, and I see that rolling out across the region. And I think that all of these initiatives are actually relevant to children's achievements in school, as you all know my views on fitness, health and diet. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to thank Castle Douglas PTA in conjunction with the new headmaster for the great job that you've done in the corridor, improving the corridor at Castle Douglas High School, make a massive difference. And obviously, like my fellow councillors, we'd like to keep pushing for more accessibility for children at Castle Douglas High School. It seems to have been on the radar now for a long time, and it's very unfair to the children who have disabilities or accessibility issues. So any reports on that would be most grateful, but I think we have to bring it forward to committee yet again for funding, which is always a challenge. So with regards to my questions, I just wanted to ask the officers and perhaps the teachers today. We had a meeting yesterday, actually, a poverty and inequalities meeting, and we were led to believe that still in our high schools in Dumfries and Galloway, not every single child has access to an iPad, which obviously helps with their success and learning. And I just wondered if we could have a report coming forward as to how many iPads and what we need to do as a council to try and ensure that happens, which was discussed yesterday at that particular committee meeting. And I also wanted to ask the question with regards to subjects being shared across the high schools at the moment. Councillors are a little bit left in the dark as to whether children are being transported from WT Castle Douglas across to Kirkcudbright or vice versa. It's possibly something we need to bring up with the headmasters ourselves just for an update, but some update on that would be appreciated. And the accessibility for transport for that for children and parents and carers would be good. And finally, the additional support needs in Gelston and Crossmichael primaries have been a bit of a challenge. In Crossmichael, I see in the report that you're working on that at the moment. Could I have some assurances that that is happening and going forward in the right direction, please? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. A number of questions there. I'll try and remember them all, and I'll pass over to our head teacher colleagues to answer some of them. In terms of the one-to-one device that you mentioned, I know that you mentioned iPads specifically, but we would talk about one-to-one device for our young people. We are not there, is my understanding. It's not my area of expertise. You can understand it's a performance. However, we can get information to you in terms of what it looks like across the authority. There certainly is records of how many devices we have for our young people, but certainly the last conversation I had with that side of the team, they felt that we were similar to other authorities and we were not in deficit of other authorities. And I do also know there's project work going on to ensure we have that infrastructure with BT and then making sure that then young people have those devices across our estate. But I don't have any further information than that. I will now pass over to the head teachers to perhaps share the second question, which was about, just remind me. Subject choices, yes.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. In terms of moving pupils between schools, there's actually relatively little of it happening between our schools. It has happened in a small way previously, and arrangements made on individual bases, but normally we try and plan the lessons in a way that pupils would start their day at the other school and then return. But transport is, with public transport, obviously all young people have free public transport, is how we would look to it. I know that there are different arrangements in different schools though, but the cost for transporting is obviously very, very high.
Thanks very much, Mr Tuffrey. I'd also just like to say thank you to all the heads for attending here today. It's always good to see your faces, except for at PTA meetings. So, yeah, and I think my last question was just with regards to Crossmichael and the sharing of the ASN support between the two schools, just to see if it's progressing as planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Don't want to speak on behalf of our supporting learners manager. However, we are aware that schools put in a request for assistance and allocations, and those requests are moderated, assessed, and support is allocated to schools based on the evidence that they provide. And then from that point, the delegation sits with the head teacher as to how any resource is apportioned across the school.
Thank you for those responses. Councillor Lowe.
Good morning, and this is a particular question for Mr McGugan for Dalbeattie. I notice you've put the money in for a PEF worker, and I'm just wondering how much interaction that worker has with external agencies that may then support that family and that pupil, for example, health, or if there are cost of living issues, or working with child planters, how much external interaction they have.
Sorry, Councillor Lowe, before Mr McGuigan responds, we just have to be very mindful that this is a public forum, and so therefore we don't want to be speaking about it should be as generic as it possibly can.
Yeah, I was just kind of asking that is there interaction taken externally if needed?
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. The PEF workers, as it was reported in the evaluation paperwork that you have, that was very much a kind of tracking and monitoring focus role. It was somebody that was very much focused on looking at the broad kind of range of data we have for our young people with free school meal entitlement, and by being focused on that, be able to intervene quite early, and bring things to the student support team and the kind of current kind of roles in the school that have that kind of multi-agency involvement. We have, as we do year on year, we've reviewed that. We've tried to make that a bit more focused, and I think one of the things that's emerged from kind of national practice is that maybe more focused and home link kind of provision, and try to maybe get more access to family and look at that, the kind of broader range of support around that. So that's certainly something that we are, as part of our review and development, we're looking to kind of move in that direction and try and capitalise on what we know is working well nationally.
Can I just add to that comment, if that's okay, just to maybe just flesh out a little bit from our perspective. So our PEF worker, the main point of contact for agency work would likely be the student support PT, and then the equity worker would feed into pupil plans. They wouldn't be responsible for pupil plans. So they're a kind of advisory role. From my perspective, they liaise with the pupils and the parents, and there may be some sort of contact with agencies, but the principal contact within schools will be the PT student support, because they're the one that lead the plan if they're going to lead the plan.
Thank you for those responses. Are there any other questions from members? Councillor Stitt.
Can I just ask for a breakdown on page 28 about exclusions and the Stewartry, please?
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Yes, to break down, because always as a rate, it tells you so much, but not very much detail. So as far as primaries are concerned, 16 pupils in total out of 1,375 pupils were excluded, and that was a breakdown of 13 pupils across 4 schools, with 2 pupils being excluded more than once. In our secondaries, that was 15 exclusions in total out of 1,330 pupils, and 14 pupils were across the 3 schools, and 1 pupil was excluded more than once. As far as our looked after exclusions, there were 2 pupils in total out of 14 looked after pupils in our primaries, and it was 1 pupil in 1 school who's excluded twice. And our secondaries, I'm delighted to say, were 0 exclusions for looked after pupils.
Thanks very much, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions from members? Okay, we'll move to the recommendation. Members are asked to, 1, consider the quality and curriculum area-based successes and developments as detailed in the key successes section of this report at paragraph 4.3 to 4.7. 2, scrutinise the area report, the Stewartry area report, as set out at Appendix 1. 3, review the attainment summary 22-23 as set out in Appendix 2. And 4, review the pupil equity fund summary as set out in Appendix 3. Are members happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you so much to each of our head teachers and for your time this morning. It was good to see you all. Have a good rest of the day. Agenda item 5. Review of area committees, report by Head of Thriving Communities. Our second report for consideration is to seek members' views regarding current and future arrangements for area committee. The review of Standing Orders Subcommittee agreed to carry out a review of area committees and arranged for a member workshop and a questionnaire to elicit views, and these are summarised in the report appendices. It was agreed that feedback from the workshops and proposed next steps will be considered by area committees, and that this is the purpose of today's report. Members are asked to consider the workshop feedback, Appendix 1, and the survey, and Appendix 2, and provide any additional comment on the 7 questions listed in 4.2.1. I'll ask first whether members have any comments on the feedback and summarised in the appendices. We have with us in person Liz Manson. Thank you for being here. To answer any questions or address any member comments. Members, do you have any comments on the feedback contained in the appendices? Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. It's page 106. It's question 6. Would you like to amalgamate the common good funds so that committees or have area committees make the decisions? Personally, myself, I think it should be left to common good committees to make their decisions, not go to area committee.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to agree that I am of the same opinion as Councillor Stitt, so I don't know whether we need to put that in the recommendations or not.
Well, the focus is to make comments relevant to the question 4.2.1 at this point, before we then move on to further questions. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Under 4.2.1, the only comment I would have is under question 3, I would prefer update reports rather than the deep dive. I'm just happy to get the updates. I think if we get those and we have further questions, then we could seek on an individual basis for that information. However, to expect officers would do a deep dive every time we had a meeting would be perhaps onerous on them, rather when we wouldn't necessarily need that information. Thanks.
Any other views? Councillor Stitt.
On question 2, should be required to go to service committees? I'm following up for number 1 with the 6-month reports. I think they should come to the service committee first.
What I would, the question specifically confirms that one-time members make a comment and make sure that we can follow that. So let's stick with Councillor McFarlane's comment. So in terms of question 1, to continue for the 6-month of the performance plan for the question 1. So we can go through each question in sequence. Okay. Are there any other further comments to question 1? Do we wish to continue to receive the current style 6-month performance reports and service plans? Councillor McFarlane.
Yes, happy to do that, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I would agree
Councillor Drysdale.
with that. Thank you, Chair. The only question I wanted to ask through yourself, Liz, was how often do we get the health and social care partnership plans? Are we just getting those once a year now with regards to delayed discharge and things? It's just to see how we used to have, in my mind, it seemed to be twice a year that Stephanie Mottram team came, but it seems to have dropped off a bit. And I'm not sure if I'm just imagining that. I should have looked back myself, but if you can update me, Liz. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, through you. So the previous agreement with the Integration Joint Board was that you did receive 2 reports each year, so once every 6 months, on the locality plan for your area. However, the new agreement, which was supported by Social Work Committee in February and then was signed off by the Minister in August, does not include local reporting. So at present, there is no requirement for the IGB or the Health and Social Care Partnership to give you performance reports. What you'll be aware is that there are area briefings for elected members, and we've had a round of these in September, and there's also one taking place in November. And that's to make sure that elected members locally are up to date with the information in their particular area. There are reports go to Social Work Services Committee and full council in the new agreement with the IJB. So there is still elected member involvement. Just note at the area committees on locality plans. Thank you.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. That's actually very interesting, Liz. And I'm just wondering if there was any way, and probably Councillor McFarlane might be able to guide me here, as we're lucky he's here. On that data, when we get these briefings, are we able to ask through the IJB and the Health and Social Care Partnership at the briefings if we can have it ward by ward, just so we can see how the home teams are coping under pressure, or otherwise, as the case may be? That would be helpful, I think, for members, but I don't know how everyone else feels in this committee meeting today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to come in and say that we have got a quarterly briefing this afternoon, and I would suggest that probably Stephanie Mottram will be delivering that, and she'll be the person to ask for that information, because she'll have access to what they have and be able to provide that, I'm sure, of Pauline.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. That's really helpful, and we'll look forward to hearing that this afternoon. Thanks.
Is there any further comment on question 1? Then we'll move to question 2. So if yes, should they continue to go to the Service Committee first? Are members happy to move to question 2? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to sort of seek a little bit of clarification from Councillor Stitt, he says he thought it should go to Service Committee first. That being the case, I'm mindful that the Service Committee, if they're going to add something to it, I can see benefit to it, but it may be that if they are going to act in a proactive way, that they may actually stop us getting certain information or change the information that we get. I just really seek that sort of clarification. I think that we should get the information as it is, and if there's no added benefit of it going to Service Committee, it should come straight to us. Thanks.
Thanks for your comment. Liz?
Thank you. Yes, so just for clarity, the reason at the moment that it goes to the Service Committee first is particularly if there's an area of poor performance or something's not met the target or a project hasn't met the timetable. So what the Service Committee has got is the power to allocate additional resources or to agree any remedial action that needs to take place. And the idea is that therefore, if it's being reported to you, that they would be able to say what has been put in place to address any poor performance. But that has been the convention thus far. And I think the reason that it's on your report today as an option for you is that that builds in then a time delay in the committee information. And one of the things that we've heard from you is some frustration that the information, the data that you're getting is often months out of date. So it was one mechanism that might be possible to give you more up-to-date information.
Thank you for that clarification and for your comments, for the members' comments. Are members happy to move to question 3? So question 3, do area committees wish to undertake deep dive scrutiny reviews on specific issues in a service plan or have update reports instead? Any comments on this proposal, members? Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks, Chair. I think at the moment I'd be happy just with what we've discussed earlier in terms of that an update report would be suitable unless there was something really concerning. But I'd be interested to hear what other elected members think. I know Councillor McFarlane's first initially proposed that, so I would be in agreement with him. Thanks, Chair.
Any further comment? Nope. So, thank you, members. Moving now to questions on community engagement. I'll invite answers and comments on questions 4 and 5 together. Councillor Lowe.
This is so for consistency more than anything else, because obviously we also had this discussion in this Dale, is that to have the programme of engagement, but to make sure that we move the venues around so that different communities get different opportunities.
Thank you. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy to second what Councillor Lowe said, because I'm showing my age. Because prior, years ago, we used to have community events, pick different venues, Dorai, Kirkcudbright, they have different topics. So I think it'd be quite interesting, because I think when you look at, I know we've had consultation as a mate week with over 16,000 people. I think if you've got a contentious thing or something that'd be interesting to the public, I think it'd be beneficial to have a kind of theme night.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks, Chair. I would agree with you, Councillor Stitt, on that. The only thing I would say, and through yourself, Chair Liz, may I ask just where we're actually at with ward events? Because I don't think we've had one for some time, almost since COVID, am I right? But I could be wrong. Are we lacking a little bit of advertising in that direction to encourage communities to be able to come to councillors, then go through yourself to maybe arrange ward events that are pertinent? We've got a lot of things happening in our wards at the moment, as we know. So, and people sometimes feel out the loop, and there's definitely a bit of questionnaire apathy and questionnaire stress, shall we say, at the moment with one thing and another. So it was just really to get your update through yourself, Chair, on ward events and where we're at with that as a council. Thanks.
Thank you. So yes, the number of ward events that we have in any year is usually in single figures across the region. And I think that's because it is just one mechanism that people can use to engage with the council. And as I'm sure you're all well aware, community conversations have become very much part of how you engage with your communities. So I think because there are many different things happening, people don't necessarily need to use the ward event mechanism. We do continue to promote it, particularly to community councils and other groups, and I'm sure elected members do offer them if you think that that's an appropriate mechanism for people to use. But you're correct that we've never had very many of them. It's usually perhaps 3 or 4 in any given year. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. That's interesting, Liz. Thanks for letting me back in. I'm slightly thinking we might be wasting time and energy on the marketing of that, because to me a community event is quite similar. Might we want to take the council forward a bit and just consider those events as community consultations, which are quite similar to ward events, unless I'm wrong, and you can guide me on that, Liz. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Liz.
So the community conversations are initiated by the council, by a service where they want to consult the entire region about a particular topic. And the budget consultation just now is a good example of that. So they're initiated by us and we want to go out. And they're also usually one mechanism in addition perhaps to online surveys, etc. Ward events are much more focused, and that's where a particular community or an organisation wants to speak to their elected members about a specific topic. So it's much more dedicated to their issue.
Understood. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Val, our youth councillor.
Thank you. I would like to note my agreement with Councillor Lowe in regards to the community events, and also mention that the timings of them would be best if they were better planned around things such as buses and public transport, as oftentimes post-events there's not many people getting transport to get home, and that can limit and impair those who are able to attend the events and ask any questions which they would have. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. We appreciate that. And so, going back to the matter, on question 5, if yes, what format, invitations and frequency would be appropriate? What are your thoughts or comments, members? Liz?
One of the particular suggestions has been about it's a way to engage with your community councils. Given you've got so many in any given ward, that one of the options that's been discussed is about that could be a way of just bringing them all together and talking to them with you about shared issues for the area. So that's an example of one of the invitation routes. Another could be, you know, all the community groups that you've given grants to through your discretionary fund and your poverty and inequalities fund. It would be a way of bringing them together to talk about, you know, the grant process, but also maybe where they could work together, something like that. That's just a couple of ideas. Thanks.
Sorry, I think Councillor McFarlane was next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Liz, we attend our community councils routinely, so it really shouldn't be an issue, and they should, but I do think that there are benefits in perhaps meeting some of the community groups. But we also have a forum whereby a range of community groups come together with the Development Trust. And there is a great deal of crossover in relation to the membership of those. So certainly within Ward 3 and I think in the Stewartry in general, we've got quite a lot of that already in place. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you. We attend our community councils, actually also involve the local organisations, but in some areas, like in Annandale, they also have a federation of community councils where they pull together anyway. So it's something that we don't actually have locally. I do know that when some community councils arrange events, they invite other councillors to come, like with the National Park meeting, they actually invited other community councillors. So sometimes they do work together, but I think we need more of that.
Thank you. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks very much, Chair. Going back to consultations or community events, I noticed tomorrow the budget consultation, there'll be is 9 o'clock to 1, which I don't think is very handy for get feedback, because a lot of people will not be there because they'll be working. And I think if we're doing things like frequency events, we should be making them in the evening times, because I don't think tomorrow, I know that's a wee bit different for this, Liz, but 9 o'clock to 1 to have a budget consultation in the town is not very handy. And I think it was brought up at last week's Debate Community Council that it wouldn't be beneficial to all members of the public to come along and give their points of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks very much, Chair. This is an interesting conversation, actually. I have a different view, as is often the case, in terms of, you know, our council's priorities are for sustainable travel in the region, contributing to net zero, and the council being a low carbon organisation. For me, having been in Ward 3 and 4 and now in Ward 5, I find the travel in the evenings too much. Often if you've got a third councillor, with all due respect, who's not able to attend in the evening, and that's quite fair, sometimes it's just two of us covering community council meetings, and I have really tried to push as a council that going forward for community council meetings, we as councillors, after being full on most days, are able to attend some of these community council meetings online, and I think that has to be taken forward. It's been taken forward, Liz and Chair, in the rest of the council. Why can community councils not operate as such unless they have Wi-Fi and accessibility issues? I totally understand that, and whilst I accept a lot of community councils wish to see us in person, it's quite a long day also if some of us have care and our own businesses to run as well. So I don't wish to go against what Councillor McFarlane said, because he's doing a good job, you know, getting to all of these. But personally, for me, I can't get across to Dumfries and back some evenings. There's 3 over in Dumfries. That's an hour travel time on top of my full day. So I don't wish to be selfish, but I find it really tough at the moment in the evenings. So I'm wondering if we could look at that going forward. Possibly that could be part of a community conversation with our community councils. But I do think it might be nice to all meet up, because we've seen some really good practice lately in terms of the way we communicate now. Things have moved forward somewhat, and a lot of people, unfortunately, don't buy the paper as much, which is sad, but that's the way of the economy and the cost of things, and people are looking online for information. And we've seen Castle Douglas, for example, Castle Douglas Community Council taking the initiative and having a Facebook page, because they have looked at what other community councils are doing, and it's making it a lot easier now. The information is getting out into the communities in a different format. I accept it's not accessible to all, but I would like to think about what we're talking about here in depth, because I think it is important for people to still meet face to face, despite the fact I'm going against that on some of my community council meetings. So maybe one community council event, conversations to bring our community councils together, just to share good practice and ideas, in my opinion, would be a good way forward. Thanks for the ideas, though. They're much appreciated. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. This is my personal comment. I understand and agree with Councillor Drysdale, and that in terms of being able to access all of these in a face-to-face, particularly in an evening setting, especially within the Ward 3. There are very few people maybe in attendance. For instance, last Monday we had in Kelson Community Council, only 3 people, and the event had to be cancelled because the weather was cold and so forth, and so it made it difficult. So we need more flexibility and options in terms of whether it be face-to-face or remote participation. And the council perhaps needs to conduct a review and look at some investment to ensure that we do have the appropriate digital infrastructure, and that we can ensure that throughout all the community councils that buildings have the necessary Wi-Fi, and so that those options are available and can be considered. It may be that we need to buy some TV screens to enable remote participation. I know that some community councils can't afford that, and so there would need to be some kind of grant or some other system in order to be able to support this approach, so that everybody has the option of considering in-person or remote. I think that would greatly improve things. Young council representative, Val?
Thank you. And I would also like to mention that in the case of councillors not being able to attend, either due to not being there in person and of course not being able to alternatively be there electronically, is there a way for councillors to put forth their opinion or questions for it to be brought up in the meeting regardless of their attendance? As such, we're missing out on a lot of vital points and a lot of information which could be obtained through these points. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. That's a very good point you've made, and I know we all choose our own ways of working, which is what is our prerogative, and the way we communicate, I'm sure, between us all is different, but in many ways similar. So what I tend to do, and I think other councillors do the same, if I can't attend or it's last minute, or that my community council get a quick report from me, and actually completely unusually I have managed to join through a WhatsApp, FaceTime sometimes, because the group were happier to have that happen than me not attend or send a written report. So, but we had to set that up ourselves, and I had to obviously reach agreement from that particular community council on that evening that they were happy to do that. And I think that just shows that people are prepared to be a bit more dynamic and accept that as councillors we've got a lot of miles to travel. It's a hugely rural area. So yeah, just good points. Thank you for that.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you for everybody's comments and contribution. I think that was helpful. We'll move now to the delegation linked to the concerns to community asset transfer. Question 6. Would area committees wish to have the remit to approve community asset transfer requests if possible?
I think it should come to area committees, if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that we have generally got the information and we would have the ability to do that. In saying that, though, I would ask a couple of questions. How often has a community asset transfer been progressed, got into a committee and not been approved? And do we need some sort of a consistency for adjoining areas, just to sort of make sure that there's some sort of consistent benefit? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Liz?
Thank you. Yes, so I think we've had 2 asset transfers that have come to area committees where you have recommended to the Strategic Service Committee that it does not approve. And in both these cases, the Service Committee has agreed with your recommendations. So the vast majority have indeed been recommended for approval. And I think some of that is because of the work that goes in to the business plans, particularly before they are presented to the area committee in the first instance. The issue about making sure there's consistency across the region, I think that is something that we have been very mindful about. And I think that's why at the beginning, or indeed the first 7 years that we've been doing community asset transfers, it has been a determination by a strategic committee. We feel now elected members have got sufficient expertise, there's the sufficient consistency in the decision making that it is now, it would be quite possible to have the decision made at area committees. You'll see in question 7, you know, there could be a couple of limitations that are set on that. So, for example, if the officers are not recommending it for approval, is that perhaps one which is therefore more controversial or more complex? You know, would that go to a strategic service committee? Would there be a maximum value that the area committees would want to look at for their CAT? So for some, you know, if it's a really, really big council asset that is being proposed for transfer, that would then be a more strategic decision and therefore go to a service committee. So the other option, I think, sorry, the other safeguard in terms of that consistency is that the review subcommittee is a subcommittee now of full council. So if there were any queries or any appeals, that they would be held on a region-wide basis. And that would also be a mechanism to ensure that there's a region-wide view of any decisions that a community transfer group didn't feel was appropriate. So at the moment we've got this 2-stage process where you consider the request and then you make a recommendation to the service committee. What we're seeing is, because there is that consistency in their accepting your recommendations and the time delay, which is one of the things that the community transfer bodies are telling us, it takes a very long time to go through the area committee cycle or the common good committee cycle and then to the service committee. So it takes several months for them to get a decision once they've submitted their request. So that's why it's come before you today as a possible development. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, do you have a relevant comment to make?
Yeah, it's really just to sort of say that what Liz has said there has really reinforced the fact that we have the ability to do it, because even on the occasions where we've refused it, the committee has supported it. So it suggests that we get it right, well, so far 100% of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a reflection on, Liz said something there about common good. I'm assuming that common good property will go through its same process as normal prior to it going to area committee.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Councillor Howie's just asked my question.
Good. So, in terms of question 7, if yes, are there any limitations that should be set? For example, only those recommended for approval, a value limit? Councillor Lowe.
This was a second comment I would have made. The only thing I would say is if it's an asset that has brought money into a common good fund, that would have to be a consideration. It may well be that that group has been paying a rental and that's been received and they're taking it over, but it's just something we'd need to consider.
Yes, that's already built into the reports that come to you. And, you know, for example, if an asset is bringing in a significant amount of money to the council, that is one of the things you'll take into consideration, whether or not you think it's the right thing to do to transfer it. As I'm sure you all know, you can't make your decision purely on financial grounds, but it's something that you do take into account when you're looking at whether or not it's right to transfer it or not.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not entirely sure how to word this, but if it was a building of cultural significance, for example, that wasn't bringing in money at all, or part of that building, I'd be interested to hear what you think, Liz, and other councillors think. Would that need to go to a bigger committee? For example, I'll just pick a building. Half of this building, for example, the other half of this building could potentially long-term be used for affordable accommodation if it's not being utilised enough. Is that a decision that would sit with the area committee, does everybody feel? Or is that a decision that would have to go out to full, a bigger service committee? Because it's been almost a culturally significant building in this ward and probably across the region, but I think we can all agree it's being lesser used than it used to be, and we're having to heat, and there's a lot of costs incurred in that building. So that's a really difficult one to think about. I don't know how other councillors feel. So different argument to Councillor Lowe's, which was a pertinent argument as well. I don't know the answer to that one. I'd need to hear what other councillors said. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Any further comments from anybody? Councillor McFarlane.
Always happy to talk. No, I would say it's a very good point. However, I think we have to look at it as are we happy for a building of cultural significance to deteriorate and lie void, or would we be happy for somebody who has a plan to actually do something with it to go ahead and perhaps put some sort of guidelines or restrictions on what it can be used for or how it could be used, but we would negotiate that at the time of the transfer. But ultimately, buildings, they get listed and then they get delisted as a means of managing them sometimes. So I think we could still do it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, members. And the final question again on delegation. Question 8. Do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse local place plans? Your comments and views on that question, members. Councillor Lowe.
I think this is something that we need to take on, having been on an Economy and Infrastructure Committee of 1,100 pages, of which about 600 were the place plans, and none of them were actually in the Stewartry. So I think this is something we know our communities, we know the people in our communities, so we can actually see more of the detail.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought Dalry was in there, was it not, Kim? Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I think it is something that we should do because it's something we should be engaging with our communities for. However, I'm still don't feel I have an adequate grasp on place plans and how they come together and such like. And I know we have had some seminars, but I'd like to have some training as a means of making sure that we had the adequate level of expertise to be able to approve them. Thanks.
I fully agree, Councillor McFarlane. With local places and the council having discussion with communities, when I've been part of that, I feel that we should be fully briefed on what the place plan is so that we know whether or not to support it. And in terms of next question, Councillor Stitt.
Just happy to agree with what we're going. We should endorse local place plans, and if seminar would help it, that would be fine.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. On the other hand, I think if us as councillors have attended our local place plan meetings, which I have, and Shona McCoy in planning has been really helpful with regards to guidance as to where we sit on those place plans from a planning perspective. So I would absolutely endorse and encourage the fact that we on this committee should be endorsing local place plans alongside other councillors in this meeting today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Liz, any comments, final comments?
No, thank you. Just to compliment you on the debate that's been extremely useful and very thoughtful comments that you've given us, which we will feed in, and then obviously the outcome of all 4 area committees will be brought forward in the new year. Thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Stitt has a comment.
Can I come back to the original thing that I said before I jumped the gun on page 106, where it's talking about common good, some subcommittees, to have area committees make decisions. I think we should have the continue with the current practice at common good, make their own decisions, etc.
Liz, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you very much. So, yes, you will see that in the workshop and in the survey last year that there was an overwhelming majority from members about continuing the existing arrangements. So, although the officer group is looking at some of the arrangements round about common good subcommittees and generally just how to improve them, they're not taking forward the proposal to amalgamate the common good subcommittees into one. So that's not an area of active development. Thank you.
Could you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Well, thank you for everybody's time. I can see that Claire and Wilma have been recording our views, and these will feed into the report to ROSO for final decision by full council. So we'll now move to recommendations. 1, note the issues relating to area committees raised by members through a workshop and survey as referenced in paragraph 4.2 and detailed in appendices 1 and 2. Number 2, provide additional feedback on the issues with a particular focus on the questions highlighted in paragraphs 4.21 to 4.2.3 and 3. Note the timetable for the development of recommendations and decisions by the review of standing orders, ROSO, subcommittee and full council as set out in paragraph 4.3. Are members happy to agree the recommendations?
Happy to agree.
Okay, Liz, thank you so much for being here in person. Good to see you. Item 6. Cheerio, Liz. Appointment to outside bodies. Report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. We now turn to our final report today, which is the Appointment to Outside Bodies report. This report asks us to consider an outside bodies appointment of 1 member to the Mill on the Fleet Board of Directors. Do we have any nominations for this position? We have with us Tracy Sanko in attendance to answer members' questions and comments. Members, any comments? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Am I correct in thinking that Councillor Campbell's currently the trustee in that case? And if so, I'd be happy to propose him if he's happy to accept it. Thanks.
Councillor Campbell.
I just read it and thought, oh.
So I was the trustee on the Mill and the Fleet, and I took a decision to stand down to allow other ward members the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for clarifying that point. Are there any nominations that members wish to make?
Thank you, Chair. I would be oh, now I'm in a difficult position, so I'm going to stand back for a second, sorry.
Councillor Stitt.
Is this open to every member? Is it just open to the ward that the Mill and the Fleet's involved in Ward 3? Or, I'm not sure.
Perhaps we could check with Tracy Sanko. Can you clarify that point?
Thank you, Chair. Any member from the Stewartry Area Committee, please, any nomination is welcome.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. You're putting me in a very difficult position here because I don't want to. I don't want to nominate one or other because both are just as able to. Okay, well. Okay, Andy. Good point. To be fair, that does keep Councillor McFarlane busy. So I would like to nominate Councillor Dennerley. Would anyone be happy to second that?
Thank you.
Happy to second.
That's noted then, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and I accept that nomination. We'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to appoint one elected member to the Mill on the Fleet Board of Directors as detailed in section 4 and the appendix. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Item 7, any other business deemed urgent by the chairman due to the need for a decision. I have no further business, so that concludes the meeting. Could I thank you all for your contribution? Our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, the 19th of March, 2025. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.